Martha's Vineyard is about to run out of legal marijuana. Local former president's hardest hit. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, the Associated Press told the story this week about an unnamed 80-year-old Vineyard resident who drove to a little store called Island Time. It's a dispensary to pick up her usual dose. But the owner, Jeff Rose, had to tell her that the cupboard was bare. That's according to the AP. He had to close up shop 3 weeks earlier after selling out the last of his inventory of weed and edibles. Barack Obama could not be reached for comment, by the way, before we began recording this segment. But my sources say he was last seen on the sofa with a family-sized bag of Cheetos. So I guess he's doing all right during this crisis.
Yeah, which you picked up from Bill Maher.
It's good to be the former king. Anyway, the culprit behind the shortage is the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, which ruled
they probably do have a Cannibal Control Commission.
Hannibal Lecter hardest hit, which ruled that transporting pot across the ocean, the little tiny strip of water to Martha's Vineyard, whether by boat or by plane, risks running afoul of federal laws. So you can grow weed on Martha's Vineyard, but you can't transport it there. And never mind the part where people do transport it to the island every time they buy it on the mainland and then bring their stuff home. They just can't transport it to their own store for purchase by somebody else. Bill, I'm getting a headache just thinking about this. Is there no end to government absurdity? Is there no like top end?
Well, that one's easy. No. But assume you want more than that.
I really
here in Los Angeles, there are every fourth store on Ventura Boulevard has got a little green cross sign. It's like the red cross sign, the green cross sign, and they're just medical marijuana dispensaries for people with medical problems. Like, I have trouble staying asleep in the morning when I wake up. Here's your prescription. But yeah, so all I really have to say about this is just my personal take on things. The supporters of recreational marijuana say that it's not as harmful for you as alcohol, and they're probably right about that. They might be right about that. I'm just going to leave that up in the air. But it's not my kind of. Let me try it the third time. It just seems unmanly compared to getting smashed on scotch is what I'm trying to say. I guess that's really where I'm going with it, It's like if I'm going to have former presidents sitting around, like medicating themselves into oblivion or the rich and powerful, I really, really, really want the Don Draper vibe. I don't want the Cheech and Chong vibe. To me, there's an entirely different kind of dynamic at work there, with a really excellent single malt scotch versus, just like some guy who used to have control of, 2,500 nuclear weapons holding a little alligator clip with a tiny little roach. To me, it just seems demeaning and degrading. And I think they should all be ashamed of themselves personally there. Let the hate mail begin.
All right. Billy, actually, you reminded me of something. There was a moment that I'll never forget. It's one of the few moments from the show I actually still remember from Mad Men. It was from the very first episode, and this is what hooked me on the show. Don Draper, in the second half of the episode, he spends it at his mistress's apartment in the Village in New York City. And she's a little bohemian. She has some weed. They both get stoned. One of her hippie pals comes over, and he gets stoned. And Draper's getting ready to leave, and you can hear the police are out in the street arresting people, probably, a drug raid. And Don's putting on his perfect, Madison Avenue top coat and hat. And the hippie guy says, excuse me, beatnik guy says to him, "You can't go out there." And Don Draper, looking all cool, says, "No, you can't go out there." Great moment. Anyway, Scott, back to our present absurdity. I want to sum this up for you. The illegal drug that is legal in Massachusetts that anyone could purchase when it was still illegal can't be reliably found on Martha's Vineyard because of a state regulation respecting a federal law that probably doesn't apply. And the one local grower who figured he had a captured market couldn't make enough money selling something people were previously happy to pay top dollar for. So, Scott, I ask you, is there a single government policy you're aware of that I couldn't write an equally long-winded and ridiculous sentence accurately describing?
Not that I'm aware of, no. And I can remember many years ago when I heard people making the argument that marijuana should be legal. I remember thinking, you're just going to make it more difficult to get. It's
Nailed it.
It's going to be more expensive. It's not going to be as strong, and it's going to be more difficult to get.
Well,
why would you?
Turns out it is much stronger,
It turns
right?
out, yeah, it's way stronger now.
So, but at that time, that just seemed like. Now, I hesitate to comment on this because, especially new viewers will be looking at me and going, "Hey, how does Jerry Garcia and Allen Ginsberg's love child have an opinion on this?" But I think. I went to a doctor and I thought I needed such a prescription. And I said, Doc, I feel like I just keep slipping into lucidity. Do you have anything to help with that?
Yeah, that's a problem. A lot of that going around.
It's funny because, we're talking about, it's not really the ocean that they're crossing, right? It's just a little section of ocean water, right?
Yes, that is completely within Massachusetts state boundaries.
Yeah, so I don't know if they could somehow convince the authorities that wasn't ocean water, that it was lake water or some other kind of water. Once you release anything into the hands of government is like a man. Let me make this analogy. A man will give you an opinion if you ask him, even if he doesn't have an opinion. And so
that's how we make our living.
Yes, I see this in the store all the time where, a woman insists on getting her husband's opinion about a rug or a sofa or something like that. And I can tell that this guy hasn't ever thought of it, even though they were shopping for it, until the moment she asks for his opinion. And then he feels like he has to muster an opinion. He wants to be helpful. He feels like he's a man. He should have an opinion. And so he'll give one. Government's like that. If government's not involved in something you're doing, then just keep doing it. But once government gets involved, they're going to have an opinion. And their opinion usually is going to involve things you don't like. And so all the people who were pushing for legalizing this, what they were really doing is governmentizing it. And that is, if you want to kill something or at least make it more expensive and have more negative implications, then governmentize something. Now, I'm not saying we'd be better off if it was, if it was being ruled by criminal gangs, which it still is, by the way. But I just think it's almost laughable to see these poor liberals in Massachusetts having to deal with the government that they wrought.
Yeah.
Well, it can be a beautiful sight sometimes. Somebody joked during Prohibition that they couldn't understand why both sides were so unhappy with Prohibition because alcohol was, legal nowhere, but available everywhere. Everybody should be happy. Hooray, mission accomplished. But it's become clear to me that while the war on drugs has been an absolute failure, it's corrupted the Constitution, particularly the Bill of Rights, it's also true that legalization hasn't exactly worked out as promised either. The absurdities just keep stacking up, and frankly, so do the damages. So I'm guessing that the best option policy-wise is probably somewhere in between, somewhere in the middle between legalization and this ruinous drug war. But whatever the solution is, apparently you can't get it on Martha's. And that is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.